this video, I'm going to walk through the 4 most valuable people to network with in consulting, where to find them, and how to get the most out of meeting them. I had to learn this the hard way, but fortunately, you don't have to. Okay, let's get into it. There's 4 categories of people you should prioritize networking with, especially in your early days in consulting. Staffers, potential line managers, colleagues, and MDs. Let's go through each of them one by one. Staffers. These are the people who are literally employed to help you find a role. They'll have early insight into the roles coming up, but they can also give you feedback on your internal CV. Most consulting firms expect you to have an internal CV that you use to apply for roles. Now, it's much like a normal CV, except that it tends to be in a very firm-specific template. And the people to help you nail that are staffers. Typically, you also have to have a quick interview or chat with the hiring manager of that role. And the staffers are the people who can give you a heads up on what they're expecting or questions they might typically ask. You can make a bunch of duff applications and work it out for yourself, or you can network with the staffers and use their intel to help you get ahead. There are too many consultants and analysts who think that staffers are below them because they're back office. If you turn up with this attitude, the only person you're hurting is yourself. People who befriend the staffers are the ones who do best, because you know what? A bit of basic common courtesy goes a long way. Different firms call them different things, but whatever your firm calls them, they are your greatest ally in securing at least your first role. So where do you find them? Well, everyone's assigned a staffer when you start. To stand out, be proactive. Reach out, drop 15 minutes in your diary, and introduce yourself. Trust me, they'll appreciate the initiative. Speaking with staffers, it's normally easy to prepare for. Generally, the objective of these meetings is for you to share a little bit about your skills and experience and what kind of roles you're looking for so that they can send the right roles your way. But it's also for you to tell them what you've applied for so that you can work collaboratively as a team rather than duplicating work. Now, this prep actually goes against advice I'm going to give later in the video, but in my experience, networking with staffers is normally the one that bucks the trend. Meeting potential line managers. Now, often consultants will book in a coffee with an MD and think that they're doing this. It's very unlikely that your immediate line manager will be an MD until you're at least a senior manager. It is important to meet MDs, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But it's also important, if not more important, to meet people who could potentially be your line manager. As an analyst, that's senior consultants or managers. Again, different firms call things different terms, so just map this onto whatever terminology your firm uses. What you want to do is meet the people to whom you are most likely to be useful in a role. But where should you start? Everyone is assigned someone, typically called a career counsellor or a career coach, when you start. This is the person who helps guide you through the firm and will also represent you at appraisal. They will typically be at a similar level to someone who could be a potential line manager. They're also generally discouraged from being your actual line manager. This gives you a huge opportunity. You'll be told who your career coach is, so all you need to do is reach out. What they will be able to do is connect you with people in their network who are potentially looking for people in roles either now or maybe in the future. All you need them to do is make that intro and then be proactive. Book in a coffee, virtual or otherwise, and build that connection. Okay, you've got their attention, but how do you get the most out of the meeting? You need to demonstrate a genuine interest in the topic that they're working on. So be prepared with some background reading and some great questions. What will get you remembered is these 2 things. 1, were you interesting? And in a moment, I'm going to show you how you don't actually need to do a lot of talking to achieve this. 2, can you be useful to them? Ultimately, people are selfish. They will remember you more because of what you can do for them rather than what they can do for you. You win when the answer to this question is mutually beneficial. So in this example, they need someone to do a role and you need a role, so everyone's a winner. You can also ask them to intro you to someone, and so you grow the daisy chain. This way of networking guarantees you at least one connection, but there's another way, and most people don't know this one. Here's a way that most people don't know. When you get the list of available roles, you'll typically see who the hiring manager is. The person hiring for the role and the line manager are generally the same thing in consulting roles. So now you have a whole list of people to contact. Here's what I used to do for the analysts in my cohort when I was a graduate lead. I used to get the list of available roles, filter on analyst, find the hiring manager, and then I'd shoot them a quick message. Something like, "Hey, name, hope you're well. I see you're looking for a role title. I know someone who'd be perfect. They're called name. Are you happy for me to intro you? Here's their CV in the meantime." I was also kind of sneaky. I used to send these about 6 p.m. when people were starting to wind down for the day. What would happen is I'd pop up and they'd just quickly reply to get this small but niggly thing off their list. And because their objective at the time was, frankly, to get my message out of their mind, they'd generally reply something like, "Sure." I'd then go ahead and do the intro with the analyst I had in mind. I suspect that the next morning quite a few people would look and go, "What's this?" But by then, they'd already said yes. And I'd already done the intro, so it'd be rude not to. Now, I did this for analysts, but there's no reason why you can't use this as a networking tool for yourself. Here's what you do. 1. Review the roles list and find the hiring manager. 2. Apply for the role in the normal way. 3. Reach out with a message that goes something like this. "Hey, I see you're looking for a role title. I'm really interested in the thing that the role does or the sector that the role is in. Do you mind if I pop 15 minutes into your diary so we can chat some more? I've applied for the role in the meantime through insert whatever portal name you use is. I've actually put this message in the description so you can literally copy and paste it." Remembering what we said before, when you speak with them, apply the same 2 principles, and don't forget to ask, "Is there anyone you suggest I speak to?" at the end. Suddenly, you'll have a growing network. At the beginning, you want breadth. You just need to meet a lot of people. But at a point in time, generally about a month into your consulting career, you need to flip that and go for depth. You can't realistically maintain a huge network, so you need to think about which connections are really going somewhere and which are more of an occasional check-in. Then double down on the ones that are really worth investing in. Colleagues. Everyone underestimates this one, especially at the beginning. Here's where consultants typically go wrong. You think that because it's a competitive environment, and these people are both your peers and your competitors, that you should be wary of them. Now, that's always going to be true for a minority. There's always going to be 1% of people who are frankly just nasty pieces of work, and you should avoid them. But they're a minority. What makes consulting colleague relationships so great is how willing to help people are despite the competitiveness. Getting to know as many of your peers as you can, especially when you start, is invaluable. Those silly questions you don't want to ask anyone else? Your peers. Need help finding templates? Your peers. Need to bounce ideas around before presenting to a client? Yeah, your peers. Okay, so now you're convinced your peers are allies, not enemies. How do you actually meet them? Firstly, you might start with people on the same day like I did, and that can be your strongest advantage. We swapped and shared knowledge as we gained it, and it was hugely valuable. But you need to know more than one person. So how do you grow your peer network? Let's make the very valid assumption that you're using Microsoft Teams in your organization. If you click on your name, you'll be able to see an org chart. You'll be able to see who your peers are, and then you just need to send them a quick message and get 15 minutes in the diary. How do you get the most out of this meeting? Well, you want to be prepped with plenty of questions, because what gets you remembered is being interesting. And the determinant of that is not what you say, but what you ask. To be perceived as interesting, you need to show that you're interested. So make sure you're ready with a few killer questions that shows you're interested in them. You also need to make sure that you're getting something out of this meeting too. So you'll want to be ready with a question like, Is there anything I should know when I've just joined? This is a great question because you're tapping into their ego because you're basically implying that they have some expertise, and you're also getting some useful intel out of it. So everyone's a winner. To further grow your network, make sure that you're attending events like All Hands and any networking specific events that your firm puts on. You don't have to go to all of them, but choose a few that are the most valuable to you and go to them. You don't need to meet every consultant at your level in the firm. Generally, firms are split into groups called practices, or in Accenture, it was called a deployed to entity, or DTE. These are basically groupings of similar people. For example, I was in CMT IPD at Accenture. That meant that I was aligned to the communications, media and telco industry, and my specialism was industry portfolio delivery. Basically, I was grouped with other project managers who specialised in media and telco clients. Meeting peers in the same practice as you is the most valuable use of your time. Last but not least, we have networking with MDs. Everyone seems to think that this is the most important networking you can do in consulting, but in reality, it's probably the lowest priority. Here's where knowing MDs helps. Promotion. We can't get away from the fact that it's useful to have written support for promotion from an MD at all levels in consulting. And secondly, roles. If you know an account lead at a few accounts, it can be helpful to give you a heads up on the work that's coming through the pipeline because, well, of course they'll know that. So it does make sense to network with MDs, but most consultants are doing it wrong. This is a mistake they make. They don't engage with the MD until the performance cycle comes around. Then they book in a coffee, bombard them with a list of their achievements in the last year, and then say, "So, will you support me for promotion?" If you want a 101 in how to annoy an MD, that's it. Here's what you need to do instead. Find out how you can be useful to them. When it comes to MDs, the best type of networking is them being positively impacted by your output. So, find a reason to first meet them, apply all the networking hacks we already discussed, but be clear. With MDs, you have to give to get. I don't know, perhaps they need some support with slide formatting for an RFP response, or maybe there's something on the account management side that you can help out with. For example, I used to organise the Meet the Leader events for our practice. This wasn't by accident, I chose it. It gave me a reason to reach out to those senior people in the first place. I then made sure that interacting with me was frictionless. I'd find out in advance from my peers what type of food they liked eating or activities they liked doing. So when I proposed a restaurant or an activity, I knew they'd already like it. All they had to do was say yes to the time and place, and the rest was taken care of. This is networking disguised as organising. You don't need to do huge things, and it doesn't need to take lots of time, but networking connected to a positive outcome for the MD that you want to meet is going to be far more powerful than coffee once a year. It makes sense to diversify. So if you're on an account, sure, get to know the MD who's the account lead, but also make sure that you get to know a few in your practice as well. Being genuinely recognised by 2 or 3 MDs is much better than 5 vaguely knowing your name. But how do you meet MDs in the first place? Attending town halls and events is a good place to start. You could message them out of the blue if you've seen them do a talk or they've written an article for an industry publication. But to be honest, it's much easier to start the conversation when there's some kind of activity as an icebreaker. Remember, the objective of that first meeting is for you to subtly work out how you can add genuine value to them. Then follow through on that, deliver against your promise, and then we're backing you all the way. Okay, we covered a lot of ground in this video, so let's do a quick recap. The 4 types of people you want to network with as a consultant are staffers, potential line managers, colleagues, and MDs. I've shown you where to find them, how to prep, and how to get the most out of actually meeting them. Networking in consulting is a lot like networking in the real world, with the advantage that it's a microcosm, and so the rules of the game are much easier to work out. Networking with these 4 types of people was the single most valuable thing I did to accelerate my career in consulting. I hope you found this video useful. If you've got any networking tips, then feel free to drop them in the comments for consultants or otherwise. If you have enjoyed this video, then please smash that like button, subscribe for more content like this, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out. And I will see you in the next one.